Here is a helpful video for anyone who's planning on forming a driveway, a patio, or anything where you might have a large object in the way, like a tree, a large rock, or even a house. And you would be planning on putting some type of a circular area like this, except for the fact that you wouldn't be able to access the center point because the tree or the rock could either be sitting on top of this area or blocking it somehow to where you couldn't come in here and create a pivot point and then use a tape measure to lay out this curved section. And of course, this can usually be done a few different ways, but I'm going to show you how to do it with a template. Now, before I get into that, let's go ahead and take a look at how you might form up a project like this one. And keep in mind that the curved area can change. You don't need to stick to anything that I have designed here. So for something like this, I would suggest creating some type of a line you could measure off of. And those lines are going to be the outside of the form boards here. Or you could use a string to where you would run a string in this direction and then a string in this direction, and then measure off of that string in either direction to get the desired locations for the end of the form boards here. So let's go ahead and add a couple lines here, and then we will throw in some more measurements here. We have 12 feet, which will be the radius of our circle, the circle we're going to use to make our template. And then we have 9 foot 10.5 inches running in both directions. So this form board here is going to be parallel to this one all the way through, 9 foot 10.5 inches, and same in this direction here. So we just need to come back from the intersecting point here 12 feet in both directions. And you could do that with a string line or by simply adding these two numbers together, 12 foot plus 9 foot 10.5 inches, and then measuring from the side to the front of the form board here in both directions as another way of finding the edge of the form boards that we're going to use for our template. Now let's go ahead and pan out a little bit so that I can give you an idea of how we're going to be laying out our template. So for example, if we take this section and move it over to here, you can get an idea of how we're going to be able to use our center point and our 12-foot measurement to create a curved line and then a template. And then we're going to take that template and transfer it to this area over here. So hopefully that makes sense. Go ahead and zoom in here. We have a square that is 12 feet by 12 feet. You can lay this out on a flat surface, a driveway, something. You can even lay it out in your backyard if you need to, but it's going to be better to have a flat surface. And in reality, you don't even need a square. You just need a pivot point, and then you can use that to line up a sheet of plywood. So for example, let's say I didn't have any of this, but I had a nail here or a screw in some type of a stable material, like even a stake driven into the ground where it's not going to move. And then I can simply measure over to 12 feet and then take my tape measure over to here and measure to 12 feet. And it can always be a little bit smaller, like what we're looking at here in the example. So we have it over a little bit. And then once we have the plywood in position, we can simply grab our tape measure, hook it over the pivot point, and then drag it around this area with a pencil to create our line that we're going to use for our form template. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I will put a link on how to draw a circle with a straight line and a tape measure. I definitely recommend checking that out. And even some of our other videos on making arches if you're having a difficult time trying to figure out what we're doing. And of course, next up on the list will be to cut the curved line and then reposition the plywood so that you can create the next curved line. And of course, that can be cut, and then you can always use this piece as a pattern to cut the next boards needed to create the template. And for our template, we are going to need 3 individual pieces, and we will position 2 of them so that the front edge of each one of these sides is sticking past about 1 inch. And then we will place the third board on the top and then screw it to the other boards to create a continuous template. And let's zoom in to give you a better idea of what we did here. You can see the bottom piece, and this one here is on top. And we're lining the inside curve and not the outside curve. However, you could do it either way. Just make sure you line up one side in hopes of reducing confusion. I know it can be confusing when you cut some of this stuff and you expect both sides to line up when they might not. So you're just concerned about the inside of this curve and not the outside. We're not going to be using the outside. So let's go ahead and zoom out here. Give you an idea for those of you who might not be following 100% how we're going to simply move this template down to here and line it up with the points at the end of each one of the forms. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that. So here's our curved section, and we can see here where the one side of the template is lining up with the form board here. We made it a little bit longer. And again, if you made yours the exact same size or it's a little shorter, don't worry about it. Just kind of get it into the general area where you think it's going to work best. And then do the same on the other side. And then make sure that it isn't moving. And to do that, we can simply drive some stakes in behind it. And if you need to somehow attach it to the stakes to prevent it from moving, then do so. And you might be able to do that with some building hardware, some framing anchors, and some screws. Now this might vary on yours, but for ours we're going to be using 1/4 inch bender board, and it's going to be 3.5 inches tall, same height as our 2x4 forms. However, if you're going to use a different size material, then you will need to adjust it here. For example, if I was going to use 2 pieces of 1/4 inch bender board, then I would put a 1/2 inch distance or even 5/8 of an inch distance between our template and the stakes. And of course, we're going to use this method to position our stakes. So again, the template is going to be firmly secured, and we are simply going to go and place each one of the stakes where they need to be located, about 1/4 inch away from the inside of the template and the inside of the stake. Let's go ahead and zoom out here. And I really can't tell you how many stakes you need to put in, but think that if you space them about 24 inches apart, you should be okay. But that won't be a big deal because you can always go back and reinsert the template and then check to see if there are any variations that need to be adjusted and then add additional stakes as necessary. Now let's go ahead and remove the template and then come down to here, and we will need to level off the top of the building forms so that we will know where we're going to be attaching our bender board to the stakes. And in order to do that, we're just simply going to grab a level and level across and get a mark that will represent the top of the form. So we're going to work our way all the way around, do all of the stakes, except of course you don't need to do the last one. And after that's done, we can go ahead and start to install our bender board. And that's not going to be difficult to do. So we're going to start by putting our first piece of bender board in here, and I don't recommend having it on the outside of the stake. Put it on the inside of the stake so you can push it towards the stakes. If I was to have the bender board on this side of the stake and I attached it to here, then I would need to either remove the stake or lift it over the stake, and that could create a problem over here. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the first piece of bender board will need to be positioned, and then how we're going to attach it to the first stake, and how it will line up with the form board here. And don't forget that these stakes can always be removed. You can make adjustments with it. You can pull the stakes out of the ground. So don't get fixed on the fact that, hey, I made a mistake here. How am I going to fix it or make any adjustments? This is all something that can be adjusted with very little effort if it needs to be. So this isn't an end-all process. It's not like pouring the concrete where once you pour the concrete, you are going to have to deal with what you have. This will be something that you will be able to make some minor adjustments to. And it won't be that difficult. You're just going to work your way around and attach the bender board to each one of the stakes. Just work your way around, and hopefully you won't need to install any additional stakes, but it's not going to be that big of a deal if you do have to. And since the bender board usually bends easy, it's not going to be difficult to create a shape like this. And like I said, if you need to, you could always reinstall the template and check to see if the bender board is deformed in any way to where you might need to add some more stakes to it. So this right here would just be another thing you could do, but I don't think it will be necessary unless you're looking for something that is going to be perfect. So not that difficult, or at least I hope I provided you with a little more insight into how you could do something like this. And as always, if you learned something, you enjoy the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the video comment area or email them to us, and I will answer them as soon as possible.